There are very few elements that some chemists outright refuse to work with, and the most infamous of them is fluorine. This gas isn't just the element with the highest electronegativity, making it so reactive that your skin would literally catch fire upon contact with fluorine. It is also highly toxic. There are only a handful of videos on YouTube demonstrating this element's reactivity. Most of these are over 10 years old and of rather poor quality. The reason for that? Only a few labs in the world work with pure fluorine, which is hardly surprising considering this is an element capable of lighting a brick on fire. But in today's video, I will show you the element as up close and personal as you have never seen it before. And towards the end of the video, I will even show you what would happen if this gas were come into contact with your skin. Elias and I had already planned to meet with a professor at the Philipps University Marburg to document the never-seen-before reaction between liquid cesium and liquid fluorine. We figured it would be a good idea to first showcase what makes fluorine so special. Knowing that Tom from Explosions&Fire had long wanted to see chlorine trifluoride or visit a fluorine lab in general, I invited him to join us. Unfortunately, he had to decline. However, it turned out he lied and planned a sneaky visit behind our backs. Meanwhile, another YouTuber, NileRed, asked if he could join us. Believing in giving smaller creators some exposure, we were more than happy to have him on board.
How's it going? You guys were, I didn't know you were waiting for us. Yeah. Hi, how you doing? Hi. I'm
Reggie, right?
Yeah, nice to meet you. Hi, Reggie. Hi.
After picking him up from the airport and checking into the Airbnb, we headed to the Fluorine lab in Marburg, run by Professor Dr. Kraus. Professor Kraus is one of those rare scientists of whom there are probably only a handful worldwide. Not only is he one of the most knowledgeable persons when it comes to fluorine chemistry, but he also works with uranium, beryllium and other substances most chemists wouldn't dare to touch. Oh, and he's also the person who has several kilograms of rubidium and the most reactive metal on Earth, cesium, in his lab. With him, we will try to capture unique footage of fluorine's reactivity in 4K and high speed. From the safety signs on the lab store alone, it is obvious this facility deals with extraordinary substances. In the entry area, there is a fireproof cabinet where we see our first fluorine cylinder. It's a 20-liter gas cylinder containing 20% fluorine diluted in argon. The reason for the slightly improvised looking plastic tubing is simple yet ingenious. This tubing allows the valve of the fluorine cylinder to be opened with pressurized air. If a fire were to occur inside the cabinet, the plastic tubing would serve as a predetermined breaking point, melting first, cutting off the pressure supply to the valve, closing it automatically. The pipes transporting the diluted fluorine are made of copper. Copper forms a protective passivation layer, shielding the underlying metal. With these pipes, the fluorine is supplied to the different fume hoods. The gas cylinder with 100% fluorine is in a dedicated fume hood to increase safety. Now let's enter the actual lab. The first thing you will notice, besides all the safety equipment, is the absence of organic solvents. The reason, once again, is safety. Fluorine would immediately ignite on contact with any organic solvents. So, what do you use as a solvent for fluorine reactions? Oh, just something like anhydrous hydrogen fluoride. You might be wondering why the anhydrous HF is purple. Commercially available HF, even when sold as anhydrous, contains traces of water. Therefore, potassium hexafluoronicolate is added, which oxidizes any present water to oxygen and thus dries the HF. Fluorine is exclusively handled in fume hoods, and you can immediately see that these hoods are different from the ones in a typical lab. Inside the hoods you will find pipes made of Monel or stainless steel. Monel, a highly corrosion-resistant alloy of copper and nickel, allows even the handling of pure, undiluted fluorine gas. And if you were wondering about the cost, a single valve costs about $1,600. The pipes are wrapped with heating wire to facilitate working with substances that have boiling points below room temperature. These fluorine lines are connected to various pressure sensors, including a manual manometer and electronic barometron gauges. The barometrons have membranes made of Inconel, another highly corrosion-resistant metal. They deform under pressure, creating a capacitance change that can be converted to a pressure value displayed outside the fume hood. On the right side of the hood, you can see an absorber tower filled with soda lime, a mixture of sodium hydroxide and calcium hydroxide. This absorber captures residual fluorine or fluorine compounds before they pass through a cold trap and reach the vacuum pump. Multiple temperature sensors are attached to the absorber tower. Fluorine reacting with the absorption material generates heat, and the information on where the heat is produced lets you know how much of the absorption material has been consumed. This is a simple, reliable way to determine when to replace the soda lime. The absorber is strictly necessary to protect the vacuum pumps. Even though they have special perfluorinated seals and use an incredibly expensive perfluorinated oil, excess fluorine would destroy them. In the fume hoods, all work is conducted with gloves. Not just to protect oneself, but also to avoid leaving greasy fingerprints. A stray bit of grease could ignite upon contact with fluorine, and the resulting heat would enable other materials inside the fume hood to burn on exposure to fluorine. To demonstrate the importance of clean working, we set up various cameras, including a high-speed camera. A huge thanks to the Hochschule Heilbronn, the Experimenta Science Center, and Felix for providing and operating these cameras. A copper tube in the fume hood is used to release pure fluorine gas, which we will direct onto various objects for demonstration.
This is one of the old fluorine bottles, which still has a manually operated valve. And the really critical points is always when you open the main valve of the 100% fluorine cylinder. But you need to do this very carefully and controlled, otherwise you risk getting a metal fire in between the pressure reducer valve and the main valve.
Geht hoch, wir sind bei.
So you ready, guys?
Yeah.
So first I will simply let some fluorine flow out and reject the presence of the fluorine with some potassium iodide solution on a filter paper.
Oh, okay.
You see the 100% fluorine directly ignites also the paper. Right? All right.
So I would say it is time to light a brick on fire. To burn the brick, a drop of isopropyl alcohol, simulating the grease of fingers, is added. It ignites immediately on contact with fluorine, and the heat generated is sufficient to set the brick itself on fire.
Now this is the isopropanol fire. But it generated enough heat so that now also the brick is burning.
And it will burn as long as fluorine is directed onto it.
Good for you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Then I'll stop, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and as you can see, the second day at the Fluorine Lab somehow turned into a YouTuber meeting with, of course, Elias from Elias Experiments, Tom from Explosions&Fire, Zach, also known as MrGreenGuy, and Nigel, of course, known as NileRed. And if you were wondering whether nitrile gloves provide sufficient protection against pure fluorine gas, here's your answer.
One moment. Oh, no.
Those camera guys.
Wait,
Ready?
Yes.
This reaction too was triggered with a drop of isopropanol, but with a high enough flow rate of fluorine gas, the gloves would ignite even without this help. For this reason, and because nitrile gloves are very permeable, special protective gloves are used in the laboratory for work involving 100% fluorine or pure hydrogen fluoride.
What's more toxic?
Is it burning?
We made a little bit of a mess.
And can we for a second talk about Patrick's face? It is his fume hood we were using to do these experiments, and you have to imagine being a PhD student, just wanting to do your research when suddenly a bunch of YouTubers show up and completely mess up your fume hood. We came up with more and more ideas on what to burn with fluorine, and you can see in Patrick's face that he's already thinking about the fact that he's the one who has to clean it again. But don't get me wrong, Patrick is a great guy, like every one of those PhD students, and I'm really grateful that he allowed us to use his fume hood.
Is smoke coming out of the fume hood? No, no?
No.
Then we're good.
I feel like I was in a fluorine pump. Dude, like, it smells right here. It smells so much worse right there.
Do you think it's... Yeah, it's an interesting smell.
How would you describe the smell of fluorine?
At first I thought it smelled like chlorine, but the more you smell it, it's actually a very distinct smell. It smells like chlorine that has gone bad. You know?
Like moldy.
Yeah, like moldy chlorine.
Yeah. Fluorine is like synthetic, and this is like more of a natural smell. It's like a bad.
And while we are at it, how about we burn a piece of coal?
Oh! It's so shitty cold that it starts directly. A little more.
Getting a lens flare.
So,
Okay, great.
I need to stop because my fingers are getting hot. And
Ah, yeah, the
sign that you need
connectivity.
to stop, you know?
These experiments clearly demonstrate the danger posed by organic impurities. This is also why the metal box in the fume hood housing the 100% fluorine cylinder has a stain. What you see here was once a pressure regulator attached to the fluorine cylinder. Made of Monel, the metal itself caught on fire and burned. This was likely due to a hair or fingerprint left inside the housing by the manufacturer during assembly. This hair or fingerprint ignited upon contact with fluorine, and the resulting heat was sufficient to ignite the metal. For this reason, all devices that come into contact with fluorine are additionally inspected and degreased. And the valve of the 100% fluorine cylinder can be operated from outside the metal enclosure to provide an additional layer of safety for the scientist. While we couldn't burn a pressure regulator with fluorine, a piece of aluminum foil clearly demonstrates a metal fire with fluorine just as effectively.
There's a lot of isopropyl flame in the back now. Maybe I took too much. One more is better, huh? Woo!
To simulate another metal fire with fluorine, we also tried to burn an iron wire.
I think the iron wire is gonna be much too thick.
Surely if we set the brick on fire, it will melt the steel.
Yes, that's the plan. Oh, see, it's simply molten. Woo! Woo!
Oh,
Woo!
oh. There we go.
Ah, I think this is impressive enough. Huh?
Yeah, I was alright.
All right.
So rude, man.
Highest German, you know.
Oh, the
appreciation we give.
yeah.
It was acceptable.
But how are reactions with fluorine conducted when it's so incredibly reactive that almost nothing can withstand it? You cannot use glass because fluorine and hydrogen fluoride would react with it. Reactions are therefore mostly conducted in passivated nickel, Monel or stainless steel containers, or most likely in PFA tubes. PFA stands for perfluoroalkoxy, a perfluorinated polymer that is resistant to virtually every chemical, at least at room temperature and for short periods of time.
You can use it up to 120 but then you are not sure if it ignites or not. So it can ignite. So you can use it up to 40 also, if you are lucky. But also it depends on the pressure and stuff like that. So there's so much. But if you heat it too much and use fluorine, you have to be careful. Just close your fuel mode and leave it there alone.
Since reaction vessels made from PFA cannot simply be purchased, the PhD students make them themselves. To do this, the plastic is heated and shaped as desired. The ends can be melted together to seal one side. Once the tubes are fabricated, they are meticulously cleaned of all impurities for the reasons already mentioned. Depending on the tube diameter, there are different methods to connect the tube with a fitting. For larger tubes, the open end is expanded and then secured with a special fitting.
So you can see there's an angle there.
Yes.
There you can put your PFA tube inside.
That you've just blasted with pressure.
And this one has just a little bit of a different angle. And so you get like one, and then it presses on top, and then it's just tight. So that's it. It's pretty simple.
Smaller tubes can be connected to a fitting using a swedge lock connection, which is then attached to the needle valve. This completed assembly is then connected to the fluorine line. In this manner, it is even possible to liquefy fluorine within these tubes. First, a vacuum is drawn on the fluorine line and the PFA tube to ensure that the setup is completely airtight. After confirming that the apparatus is sealed, it is evacuated and flushed with argon 3 times. Next, the PFA tubes are conditioned with first 20% fluorine and then 100% fluorine. This passivates the polymer and also saturates it with fluorine to slow down the diffusion of oxygen and moisture through the polymer. Then the PFA tube is cooled in liquid nitrogen, which causes the fluorine to condense inside the PFA tube. It always fascinates me how harmless and unremarkable some chemicals appear when handled correctly.
That's it right there, the little yellow dot there?
That's the yellow thing, yeah.
Oh.
You would never guess that this pale yellow liquid is one of the most dangerous substances to work with. If a drop of this liquid were to come into contact with your skin, it would almost certainly be fatal. We liquefied the fluorine for another video mentioned earlier. If you would like to see that video, consider subscribing to my channel or becoming a Patreon supporter. You will find a link in the video description. A huge thanks to my current Patreons. You make these videos possible. What's also remarkable about this lab is that many necessary devices cannot be purchased, but are instead made by the PhD students themselves. Whether it's the PFA reaction vessels or stainless steel pipelines for experimental setups, this lab does it all. It is thus the only lab I know of that has its own workshop and lathe. In fact, I had the privilege of doing a 1-month internship in this fluorine lab. If you're interested in more details about working in a fluorine lab, let me know and I will try to make another video about it. There are so many details not mentioned in this video. But for now, I think I've provided enough information to justify aimlessly making fluorine react with different materials. Lab coats are always worn in laboratories for protection. But what would happen if pure fluorine were directed onto one of these coats?
Oh, that's impressive. Yeah, but this is also a good instructional video. So if you have clean safety equipment, then it's quite resistant towards fluorine. And now let's make the difference with a little dirt, which could be oil or something. In this case we use isopropyl again. And see, this is actually one of the most important things of fluorine chemistry, that everything needs to be super clean. Because as soon as you have some organic stuff, some grease, fat from your fingers or whatever, then you can get ignition with fluorine.
While a lab coat is primarily made of cotton, firefighters usually wear protective clothing made of Nomex, a fire-resistant polymer. So let's see how well Nomex can withstand fluorine.
Nomex also burns on air when temperature is high enough. Yeah? The good thing is just that when you leave the high temperature area, then it starts to char, and then it does. So then the fire stops. You know. But as long as there is air and a lot of heat, then it will burn.
Wow.
Bye bye, fireman.
Oh god.
Yeah, but then you now see the Nomex effect. Fire goes out.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I supply it again,
Perhaps smells.
then we start again. And then it comes the Nomex effect, yeah? Crunchy.
As you can see, it stands no chance against the most reactive element in the world. And as promised, we used a piece of chicken to simulate what would happen if pure fluorine gas came into contact with your skin.
All right, you ready for me to show my meat?
Okay. Yeah, show us your meat.
Good stuff. I'll take a little bite.
Yeah, take a little bite.
One fatality from the fluorine experiment. It's my meat time.
Why not?
All right.
That would be ideal. But at least you have like something to go lower if it gets pushed back.
Volunteers for
The
what?
problem with shutters, it changes the shutter.
Your hand or your
Focus gets down.
Yeah, okay.
Doesn't really matter.
I know one guy who would probably volunteer.
I mean, hopefully it works.
Oh, this is gonna smell for sure.
Yeah.
Like,
So if you're lucky, you get some barbecue aroma.
oh yeah, let's go.
But usually the
Where's
barbecue
this-
aroma is quickly gone.
Where's the
Replaced by
seasoning?
HF. No seasoning.
No seasoning.
Spicy enough.
Good to go?
Yep.
Takes a little longer because it's so moist. There's some fumes coming out on the back. Und mein Auszücken Bolivia. Und mein Auszücken Bolivia. Und mein Auszücken Bolivia. Are you good?
Oh.
That was a lot of fluorine.
Wait, really?
Only lower than fuel. And out and close the door.
Yeah. It's the chicken gas that I
Chicken gas.
Yeah, it's just a new compound. Determine the crystal structure, publish it.
Take you back home.
Notorious. Man, die Highspeed-Aufnahme ist immer noch alles irgendwie schnell.
So
Looks like a nice chart.
What's your plan on bringing that back? You're gonna encase it in resin?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna encase it in resin and ship it.
Good idea.
I'm not gonna take it with me like on the plane because
Yeah.
they'll stop me.
Dude, it's a trophy.
Yeah, my trophy.
Beyond showcasing the world's most reactive element in detail, I want to demonstrate with this video that it is still possible to work safely with such a substance. In Professor Kraus' lab, there has never been a serious accident, despite handling some of the world's most reactive elements and chemicals. The prerequisites for this are the necessary knowledge, equipment, and respect for the substances. I still remember a statement from the lab safety seminar. Fluorine is like a circus lion. You can tame it and work safely with it, but you should never forget how dangerous it can be. The moment you become careless and neglect safety precautions is the moment accidents happen. A huge thank you once again to Professor Kraus for this unique opportunity, and of course a massive thank you to his PhD candidates for their efforts and consideration they showed us. I also want to say a huge thank you to all the YouTubers for the amazing and insanely fun time we had together. If you want to know what Tom was up to in Germany before he came to Marburg, you should check out his video about dioxygen difluoride, also known as FOOF. And while I was editing this video, another madman named Labcoats was making fluorine in his garage. Definitely another video you should watch. Other than that, thank you a lot for watching.
Cesium, metal, the golden stuff.
Yes.
Only the good stuff for you guys.